What is going on YouTube? It's your boy Spanko, and today's video is a little bit different. It's actually a discussion video. Now, as we all know, the new gold sarcophagus mega tins are coming out later this week at the end of the week, and we all also know that the new TCG exclusive promo cards that I don't think are TCG exclusive anymore, but the new promo cards are insanely good, and everyone here knows how good those cards potentially can be. All three of the cards have crazy effects that change up the game super drastically. Now, how big of an effect it will have on the game, I think it's a huge effect. I think it's going to have a huge impact on the game. It'll change the way the game is played. However, we never really know until these cards come out and are actually played. So for this video, I wanted to break down the three cards and tell you what their weaknesses are and how to actually counter these cards, because I can sit here and talk all day about how good these cards are and in what situations they're great and in how they can straight beat your opponent if they do one simple thing, or some cards are just straight blowout cards. These cards are just insanely good on their own, and I'm sure you guys have seen the videos already on how good these cards are. Now, so today's video, I'm breaking these cards down and telling you guys how to counter these cards. Now, if you guys enjoy videos like this, I don't usually do them, but if you guys enjoy videos like this, please like the video and subscribe to the channel and comment down below and tell me if you guys want to see more of this discussion stuff. I don't do it often, but if you guys like it, I can obviously definitely do it more. Now, so the first card we're going to start off with is Dark Ruler No More. It's a normal spell card, and the effect states, negate the FX of all face-up monsters your opponent currently controls until the end of this turn. Also, for the rest of this turn, after this card resolves, your opponent takes no damage. Neither player can activate monster effects in response to this card's activation. Now, insanely good card. I could talk about how great that is, and you can pretend that, oh, no damage means they can't get OTK'd, but in reality that doesn't mean anything, because Carded Demise is an amazing card. Can't do battle damage when you Carded Demise. You can't even special summon when you do Carded Demise, right? But Carded Demise is an insanely good card. We know how good that card is. So, your opponent taking no battle damage, in my opinion, is not really a downside. This card is insanely good. However, it does have some weaknesses. One, it can be stopped by spell and trap cards. Now, people tend to forget, because we see so much combo decks now that basically they'll set up 4 or 5 monsters all with negates, and this card absolutely obliterates them, in my opinion. Of course it does. They have nothing to stop it other than their monsters, but the problem is you can't use monster effects in response to this card's activation. So, essentially, Dark Ruler No More against combo decks, insanely good unless they set up a spell or trap negation. Now, essentially the way to counter this card is to play spell or traps that will negate spell or traps, if that makes sense. That's the only real way that I see as of right now to negate it. I mean, this card is insanely good. The thing is with this card is drawing it as your 6th card is, I mean, that's not bad at all. It's better than a hand trap in a lot of situations, because a hand trap, yes, although it may stop your opponent for a little bit, or it may even just get hit by Called by the Grave and then not do anything. This card you could draw as your 6th card and be like, oh, okay, very useful, boom. So the way to stop this card, honestly, is to integrate some sort of spell or trap negation in the form of a spell or trap card that can negate this card. The other, weakness, I said this earlier with this card, is that no battle damage means no OTK. The thing with this card is, even if your monsters get negated for the turn, if you can set up some big monsters that your opponent can still have some trouble outing, it still means that there is no OTK. On top of that, no OTK and making your opponent out bigger monsters or these big monster boards is still difficult for a lot of players. And the thing is, if you can't OTK them after you do this, or you can't clear their board, then this card essentially doesn't really do much for you in that sense. Yes, it'll help you for a turn. Your opponent will still have a big board of big monsters that you'll still need to be able to out. If you can't out them and the other cards in your hand can't out those cards, this card essentially does nothing for you. Now, the nice thing about this card though is that it doesn't make it so that your opponent makes a board and you lose, right? At least this card gives you the opportunity to play around that. So that's why I think this card is really good. We all know it's really good. But again, the two main weaknesses is it can be stopped by spell or trap card negates, or spell or trap cards that negate spell or trap cards, and you can't do battle damage, so means you can't get OTK'd after your opponent uses this card. Now, the next card I'm talking about is Nibiru the Primal Being. Probably one of the most talked about cards since its reveal. Nibiru the Primal Being is one of the best, most crazy monsters to ever come out in this game. Literally one of the most crazy monsters to ever come out in this game. It's a quick play sphere mode. Like, how freaking stupid is that quick play sphere mode? That's just dumb. That's just stupid. That's just, Konami, why? Why did you do that? So it's an 11-star monster, light, rock type, and it has 3000 attack and 600 defense. And its effect reads, during the main phase, if your opponent normal or special summoned 5 or more monsters this turn, quick effect. You can tribute as many face-up monsters on the field as possible, and if you do, special summon this card from your hand. Then special summon 1 Primal Being token. This token's attack and defense become the combined original attack and defense of the tributed monsters. You can only use this effect of Nibiru, the Primal Being, once per turn. Now, this card is insane. This card is stupid. Normal or special summon. That includes pendulum summon. If you pendulum summon 5 cards, so let's say you pendulum summon 5, you can Nibiru. Even though it's only 1 special summon, 5 monsters were summoned. Like, that's dumb. That is dumb. That's just stupid. Nibiru is an insane card, but it does have some of its weaknesses. Now, if your opponent has to special summon 5 or more monsters. Now, if we think about it in combo decks, I mean, Nibiru you can basically drop against any deck because any combo deck is going to have to special summon 5 or more times, or just summon in general 5 or more times. So against any combo deck, this card is insane. But it does have some weaknesses. Unfortunately, it's pretty much stuck to the side deck. Unless you're playing a go second heavy deck, something like Cyber Dragon, it pretty much is stuck in the side deck. It does nothing going first. It just sits in your hand, right? And the thing is, you can say the same thing about hand traps, but if you open your hand trap and potentially your combo, what you can do is you can make your board and have a hand trap for next turn. Whereas with this card is if you open your combo in this card, you're gonna have to tribute your own monsters when you summon it. It tributes everything on the field, right? So the thing is, this card does nothing going first for you. On top of that, it potentially can give your opponent a huge beater. Now, you get to summon the card, so you can summon it in defense position if you want. And again, link monsters don't have defense. So essentially, if your opponent has a bunch of link monsters on the board, the card is really easy to get over. But if you think about it, combo decks like Thunder Dragon, Danger, and Orchis, and everything else, Pendulum even, they won't end on a bunch of link monsters. They'll end on an Abyss, a Colossus, Hope Harbinger sometimes. I don't know what else they have, but they end on some big boards, right? And the thing is, when you end on boards like that, Levianeer, something like that, they're gonna be big monsters. So giving your opponent a big, huge beater is actually really difficult to get over sometimes. You have to understand that if you summon a Kaiju, right? Like, if you think about it like a Kaiju, if you summon a Kaiju and you can't out that Kaiju right away, it becomes a problem because now you just gave your opponent a monster. Now with this, it's a little bit worse because if you give your opponent an 11,000 attack monster and you can't kill it that turn, let's say it has a big defense as well because you're summoning it over these meta relevant boards, which is Abyss, Colossus, essentially you're giving your opponent a huge monster. And so if you do it that way and you can't get over your opponent's monster, a lot of the time they'll just be able to OTK you the next turn. Now granted, a lot of decks, especially if you're playing meta decks right now, they can probably get it over it by sending it to the graveyard, destroying it, popping it, whatever. But if you can't, I mean, if you can't do that, then your opponent can just OTK you flat out with a token. Yeah, no, I'm not even lying. That could happen. Also, another deck this card has problems with are control decks. Altergeist, Draco. It does nothing against them, right? We all know that. That's a pretty obvious thing. But there's also cards in the game like Zombie World and Darkest Diablos that doesn't let your opponent tribute summon or doesn't let you tribute summon. So when I think about it, like, you know, Zombie World and Diablos are just 2 cards in a long list of cards that don't let you tribute summon, right? But if you flip a card or you activate a card that doesn't allow your opponent or just anything to be tribute summoned or tributed at all, then Nibiru doesn't do anything because Nibiru essentially is only good when you contribute your opponent's cards. Now this card, don't get me wrong, insanely good card, changes up the game in my opinion, but it does have its weaknesses. Now for the third and final card, we're talking about Dimension Shifter, which is a new hand trap. It's 6 stars, dark spellcaster type effect monster with 1200 attack and 2200 defense. The effect reads, if you have no cards in your graveyard, quick effect, you can send this card from your hand to the graveyard until the end of the next turn. Any card sent to the graveyard is banished instead. I mean, that's amazing. It's a Macrocosmo. That's great. And Macrocosmo's at 1 for a reason. But it does have some weaknesses. 1, Called by the Grave beats it. Just like any other hand trap, Called by the Grave beats it. You know, if you activate this and your opponent activates Called by the Grave, I mean, it doesn't go through. Second, it's only really good turn 0. And the reason for that is because if you have anything in your graveyard, you can't activate this card. This card can only be activated when it has no cards or when you have no cards in the graveyard. So the thing is, after turn 0, this card does absolutely nothing for you. If you draw it, it's like a no material type card where no material, if you control no cards, boom, it's an amazing card, blowout card. Same thing with this, it's a blowout card. But the problem is, loses to Called by the Grave also does absolutely nothing after turn 0 because eventually when anything goes to the graveyard or anything goes to your graveyard, this card is insanely dead. The thing is with this card as well is it affects you. So when we say that, it means that until the end of your next turn, so aka if you use it, let's say turn 0 against your opponent, until the end of the next turn, which is the end of your turn, where everything still gets banished. So the thing is, even if you do that to your opponent and you banish a bunch of your opponent's cards, the thing is anything you send to the graveyard will also get banished. So if you're playing a deck that relies on the graveyard, this card doesn't really work for you because everything is just going to get banished as well. Now, I mean, Grand Maju de Isa is a card. And people can maybe play Grand Maju OTK. We don't know. But all I'm saying is this card is insanely good, yes, but it does have its drawbacks. Another thing about this card is it's only really good as a side deck card. Going first, I mean, like I said, if you lose the die roll, let's say, and your opponent goes first, this card is insane because you can open it, your opponent goes first, it's live, boom, boom, boom. But if you win the die roll, you have to make the decision now where it's like, hey, do I go first or go second? Now, if you're playing a go second deck, this card is insanely good. But if you're not, if you're playing a deck, you know, that relies on a little combo, relies on whatever going first, which most of the decks in the game are right now, this card isn't that great, you know. It's only really good as a side deck card because in the main deck, you know, if your opponent makes you go first, let's say, or you want to go first with your deck, this card doesn't do much for you. So anyways, that's it for the 3 new promo cards from the Gold Sarcophagus Megatins. These are my thoughts. Now, these cards are insanely good, don't get me wrong, but they do have their weakness. If you guys know of any other weaknesses or any other counter play to these cards, let me know, obviously, in the comment section down below. These cards all are insanely good. They're definitely going to, in my opinion at least, they're definitely going to change the game. They're going to do something for sure where people are either going to transition to more going second decks, maybe play less combo decks and more control decks. We'll see what happens. Gold Sarcophagus Megatins promos. Now, before you guys leave, I'm going to tell you that I'm getting a case. Yes, a full case of the Gold Sarcophagus Megatins. I'm splitting it with my boy Alpha YGO. Part 1 of the case opening is going to be on my channel and part 2 is going to be on his channel. But it's a little bit early for that. You guys will see that later on this week. If you guys enjoyed this, like this video, subscribe to the channel. And with that, Spanko signing out.
My hands steady, I feel ready, but my legs heavy, I don't get it. How come I haven't hit it already? Still working, I'm still learning, I'm still searching, finally earning something, finally turning something called a profit. If I hear you talking shit, don't get caught in it. I'll be popping off and hit your ass, dropping all your shit. Yeah, I promise this, I got promises, you ain't stopping this, cross my shit.